They whisper lies into your ears from the day you are born. They tell you that to be good is to be obedient, that love means suffering in silence, that your value is found in how much of yourself you're willing to give away. But what if I told you that every time you abandoned your own needs to please others, you weren't being virtuous, you were being erased? What if the pain you carry, the resentment that simmers beneath your smile, isn't proof of your kindness, but evidence that you've been taught to betray yourself in the name of love? Ask yourself, who taught you that choosing yourself was selfish? Who benefits when you never say no? These aren't virtues, they're chains. Chains that tear your identity apart, strand by strand, until all that's left is someone who lives for everyone but themselves. The Stoics warned us, if you want to be unshakable, begin within. That means reclaiming the parts of yourself you've been told to kill off. It means understanding that true strength isn't found in sacrifice, it's found in sovereignty. And if this truth burns through the lies you've been living, then consider subscribing for your own good. Because real growth begins the moment you stop waiting for permission to be whole. They say betrayal is sharp, sudden, unforgettable. But the most dangerous kind doesn't slice, it wears you down. It's not done to you by others. It's what you do to yourself, quietly, over time. It starts with the little things. You smile when something hurts. You agree to things you don't believe in just to keep the peace. You say yes when everything inside of you is screaming no. And no one notices, because on the surface you're still good, still agreeable, still easy to be around. But deep down, something begins to shift. Something starts to crack. This is the betrayal no one talks about. The betrayal of the self. Not with violence, but with slow and consistent denial of who you really are. You begin to shrink yourself to fit into other people's comfort zones. You soften your edges so you won't offend. You walk into rooms and leave parts of yourself at the door because you've convinced yourself that being accepted is more important than being whole. And the most painful part? It works. People praise you for being easygoing, for being understanding, for never asking for too much. But beneath that approval lies a truth that grows harder to ignore. You're disappearing. You're turning into someone others can manage, not someone you can live with. And that kind of betrayal doesn't leave a scar you can point to. It leaves a silence inside you that gets louder with time. The Stoics were not interested in people-pleasing. They were interested in truth, in integrity, in building a life that aligned with their values, not one that bent under the weight of others' opinions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." But how can you be good when you constantly abandon what's true for you? How can you live with peace if the cost is your own self-respect? This is why Epictetus said, "He who does not value himself will not think it worthwhile to do anything good for himself." Because if you don't see your own worth, you will constantly give yourself away in pieces, hoping someone else will see it for you. That is the quiet tragedy. You begin with good intentions, but those intentions become a trap. You think self-sacrifice is love. You think saying nothing is wisdom. You think keeping the peace is peace. It's not. Real peace is not found in other people's comfort. It's found in the stillness that comes from honoring your own voice. When you stop betraying yourself, things begin to shift. Not dramatically at first, but enough to notice. You say no, and it feels like rebellion. You speak your truth, and it feels like confrontation. You spend time alone, and it feels like exile. But those feelings are not signs you're doing something wrong. They're signs you're beginning to return to yourself. And not everyone will celebrate that return. Some will pull away. Some will call you distant, selfish, changed. Let them. Because what they're really saying is that your obedience made them comfortable, and your alignment now makes them uneasy. But discomfort is not the enemy. In Stoicism, discomfort is often the doorway to transformation. Seneca taught that no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have. In other words, you don't need everyone's approval. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to be chosen by the crowd. You just need to stop choosing to abandon yourself. That's where the shift happens. That's when betrayal becomes awareness, and awareness becomes freedom. There's no celebration when you start this process. No applause, no audience. It's quiet, uncomfortable, but necessary. Because every time you say yes to something that doesn't feel right, you teach yourself that your truth doesn't matter. And over time, your soul believes it. The way back begins with the smallest acts of courage. The text you don't reply to, the conversation you don't force, the favor you gently decline, the night you spend alone without shame. These are the moments where self-trust is rebuilt, not loudly, but firmly. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege is not given, it's earned. Earned by saying no to what insults your soul. Earned by standing still when the world demands you bow. Earned by refusing to betray yourself for a seat at tables that were never built for you. And the more you do this, the more your life begins to feel like it belongs to you. Not borrowed, not adjusted, not filtered, yours. You may lose people. You may lose comfort. But you will gain clarity. You will begin to feel a strength that doesn't shout, but holds. You'll stop waiting for permission to feel peace, because you'll know that peace is not something others give you. It's something you choose when you stop negotiating your value. And the day you choose yourself, not out of defiance, but out of respect, is the day betrayal no longer lives in your body. The day you no longer feel like a stranger in your own life. That's the moment you start to feel whole. Not perfect, not finished, but finally undivided. Because the real tragedy isn't being betrayed by others. It's learning to betray yourself so well, you no longer notice it happening. But the real power, that begins the moment you notice it and choose never to go back. There's a kind of love we learn that feels noble, even poetic. The kind where you give everything, wait patiently, endure without complaint, and call it devotion. But what if that's not love at all? What if that's dependency dressed up in virtue? Most people don't fall in love. They fall into need, into habit, into a quiet agreement that says, "I will abandon myself if you promise not to leave." We call it sacrifice. We call it loyalty. But underneath the surface, it's often just fear. Fear of being alone, of not being needed, of being invisible without someone to orbit. And so we pour ourselves out hoping someone will notice the empty cup and fill it back up. But more often than not, they don't. And when they don't, we don't get angry. We get smaller. We justify. We say, they're just going through something. Or, maybe if I love a little harder, they'll love me back. But love that demands the erosion of who you are is not love. It's survival. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And maybe that's the core of it. Maybe we seek others to complete what we haven't accepted in ourselves. We think devotion means dissolving into someone else, but real love doesn't require you to disappear. It requires you to show up fully. The danger of dependency is not just that you lose yourself, it's that you forget you ever had yourself to begin with. You start to believe that your peace lives in their approval, that your worth depends on their presence, that your happiness is only real when it's reflected in their eyes. And slowly, without ever meaning to, you hand over the keys to your inner world. Now they control your joy, your sadness, your sense of belonging. But no one, no matter how loving or well-intentioned, can carry the weight of your soul without breaking it or dropping it. Dependency feels like love at first because it mimics connection, but connection built on need is fragile. It breaks the moment the other person fails to meet the expectations they never agreed to. And when it breaks, it feels like betrayal. But in truth, it's just the natural result of leaning too hard on a foundation you were meant to build yourself. The Stoics never promised that love would be safe, but they warned us not to tie our inner state to things outside our control. Epictetus said, "Seek not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." That includes how people love us. That includes the ways they stay or don't. Reclaiming your sense of self starts with asking, do I show up for this person from fullness or from fear? Because if your presence is just a mask for your panic, if your giving is just a strategy to be needed, it's not love, it's self-erasure. And nothing sustainable can be built from that. Real love doesn't ask you to bleed for it. It doesn't ask you to shrink, to beg, to remain silent in order to be safe. It meets you where you stand. It respects boundaries. It honors distance. It does not feed on your wounds. Seneca, in his quiet wisdom, said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And part of that learning is unlearning everything we were taught about what it means to be close to someone. Closeness without clarity leads to enmeshment. And enmeshment is not intimacy, it's confusion. You start confusing their mood with your value, their withdrawal with your failure, their silence with your shame. But none of that belongs to you. You are not responsible for making others whole. You are responsible for remaining whole, even when others can't meet you there. When you love yourself more than anyone else, not with vanity but with presence, you begin to give without losing yourself in the giving. You begin to show up with open hands, not hands that clutch. You start to walk away, not in anger, but in peace, when your needs are no longer being met. And the beauty of it is, you stop loving for approval. You start loving because it is your nature to do so, but not at the cost of your own peace, not at the expense of your own integrity. And slowly something shifts. You stop seeking people to complete you. You start becoming so complete within yourself that relationships become a choice, not a survival strategy. You're no longer looking for someone to carry your weight. You're looking for someone who carries their own. And in that space, real connection is born, not from dependency, but from shared strength. It's not always easy to tell the difference between devotion and dependency, but your body knows. One feels like a slow, soft breath. The other feels like walking on glass. One lets you rest. The other keeps you on edge. One says, "I love you, and I love me too." The other says, "Please don't leave. I don't know who I am without you." And if you've lived that way for too long, maybe the most loving thing you can do now is not to give more, but to stop, to pause, to ask yourself, is this love or is this fear wearing love's face? Because when you finally learn to stand in your own light, you'll stop asking others to hold the sun for you. And that's when love becomes real, not because it completes you, but because it meets you whole, steady, and free. They tell you you're the glue, the one holding everything together, that without you, things would break, people would fall apart, the silence would be unbearable. And maybe there's truth in that, for a moment. Maybe you have been the one others leaned on, the one who never fell apart because someone else always needed you to be strong. But what happens when that need becomes your identity? When your worth is tied not to who you are, but to what you provide? What starts as purpose slowly turns into prison. You begin to mistake being essential for being loved, but being needed is not the same as being valued, and being useful is not the same as being seen. There's a quiet erosion that happens when you live to be needed. You become a role, not a person. You're no longer allowed to be tired, to have boundaries, to say no, because your importance relies on your availability, and when you step back, even just a little, guilt rushes in to fill the space. You start to feel selfish, cold, absent. But you're not absent. You're just human. You're just tired of earning your place in people's lives by holding them up while you're quietly falling apart. The Stoics believed in living in accordance with nature, and what is more natural than acknowledging your own limits? Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." If your philosophy is rooted in peace, in truth, in inner freedom, then your life should reflect that, not just when it's convenient for others, but especially when it's not. You weren't born to be a service. You weren't put here to fill everyone else's emotional gaps while ignoring the cavern in your own chest. Love that only exists when you're useful is not love. It's utility, and utility can be replaced the moment something easier comes along. When you begin to notice that your presence is more about what you do than who you are, that's when the wake-up call begins. At first it feels harsh, lonely even. But clarity always feels that way at first, because the comfort of being needed is seductive. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel chosen. But survival-based love isn't real connection. It's a transaction dressed up in emotional language. You provide stability, support, answers. And in return, you get the illusion of closeness. But illusions can't hold you when you're empty. They can't nourish you when you're spent. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." And that doesn't just apply to parenting. It applies to anyone who sacrifices their identity just to be someone else's foundation. If love costs your freedom, it's not a relationship, it's an arrangement. And arrangements are designed for efficiency, not for soul. So what happens when you stop showing up as the fixer? When you stop answering every call, solving every problem, staying emotionally open for people who only come to you when their world is falling apart? Often, the silence that follows is louder than any praise you ever received. Because when your usefulness fades, so does the attention. But this is not a loss, this is a revelation. Seneca reminded us that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. And one of the greatest adversities you'll face is detaching from the identity of being needed. The shift feels like abandonment, but it's actually rebirth. You begin to realize that your worth was never meant to be conditional. You don't have to prove yourself through exhaustion. You don't have to sacrifice your needs to feel loved. You don't need to stay on call to earn connection. When you love yourself more than anyone else, not with ego, but with understanding, you begin to reclaim your life. You start measuring your value not by what you give away, but by how true you remain to yourself. You no longer seek relationships where you're only valued in moments of crisis. You no longer confuse urgency with intimacy. You start allowing yourself to be quiet, to be still, to be unavailable without guilt. And that's the shift. The moment you realize you're still worthy even when no one needs you, that your silence still matters, that your rest is still sacred, that your presence, even when passive, carries weight. And part of knowing yourself is realizing that you are not just what others demand from you. You are what you protect, what you choose, what you honor in silence. You don't need to be needed to be loved. You don't need to be indispensable to be important. The truth is, the people who really see you, the ones who love you not for what you do but for who you are, they won't leave when you rest. They won't disappear when you're quiet. They will remain. Not because they need you, but because they choose you. So let go of the lie that says your value is measured by your utility. You are not a role to be filled. You are a soul to be met. And that meeting begins the day you stop trying to be everything for everyone and start being everything to yourself. Not in arrogance, but in alignment. Not in pride, but in peace. Rejection has a sting that lingers long after the moment passes. It doesn't just bruise your feelings, it strikes at your identity. You start asking yourself questions that quietly unravel your confidence. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? What could I have done differently? And with every question, the story deepens, the doubt grows, and the weight of not being chosen starts to feel like a verdict on your worth. But what if the pain you feel isn't actually coming from the rejection itself, but from the meaning you attach to it? Most people don't fear rejection for what it is. They fear what they believe it says about them. Because in a world where value is so often measured by approval, being overlooked feels like a kind of erasure. You begin to see yourself not through your own eyes, but through the lens of someone who didn't choose you. And that distortion becomes dangerous. It convinces you that if they don't want you, then maybe you shouldn't want yourself either. But rejection, at its core, is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of misalignment. It reveals what's not meant for you, no matter how badly you may have wanted it. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." That includes rejection. It's not the closed door that hurts. It's the story you tell yourself about why it was closed. It's not the silence that wounds. It's the meaning you assign to it. There's something strangely clarifying about being cast aside. It strips away illusions. The masks fall. The noise quiets. And what's left is the truth, about them and about you. You begin to notice the ways you've shaped yourself around someone else's approval, twisted yourself to fit into places never built to hold you. And maybe for the first time, you realize that being chosen by the wrong people is far more damaging than being rejected by them. The Stoics teach us that pain is not the enemy, it's the teacher. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Rejection doesn't destroy you. It reveals where you've placed your power and offers you the chance to take it back. You are not broken because someone couldn't see your value. Their blindness does not erase your light. The shift happens when you stop interpreting rejection as proof that you're unworthy and begin to see it as protection. Protection from continuing down a path that doesn't align with who you are becoming. Protection from investing your heart in places that can't hold it. Protection from stories that keep you small. Not every no is a loss. Sometimes it's the only way the universe can reroute you toward what's actually meant for you. And if you really pause and look closely, you'll notice something strange. The moments you've grown the most often came after you were rejected. Because rejection forces self-reflection. It strips away the noise and demands that you turn inward, that you ask better questions. Not, why didn't they choose me, but why did I need them to? That is where power is reclaimed. Not through vengeance, not through anger, but through clarity. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And nothing wastes more of your life than chasing people who have already shown you they're not ready for the depth you bring." Rejection is the closing of one door, but more than that, it's the gentle nudge toward the door that's been waiting for you all along. It clears the path, it removes the distractions, it silences the noise long enough for you to hear yourself again. So let them walk away. Let the unanswered messages stay unanswered. Let the doors that closed remain shut. You don't need to beg for a seat at tables where your presence is tolerated, not treasured. The moment you stop chasing what walked away, you create space for something new. Something that meets you with the same energy you've always been willing to give. Something that doesn't ask you to shrink, to prove, to perform, something that simply sees you. And in that space, where the noise of needing to be chosen quiets, a new kind of power rises. One that isn't dependent on external validation, one that doesn't flinch when faced with silence, one that understands that your value is not up for debate. It is constant, regardless of who recognizes it. The beauty of rejection is that it burns away what isn't real. What remains is you, clearer, steadier, stronger. And once you stop fearing rejection, it stops having power over you. You no longer shape your life around staying safe. You start shaping it around staying true. Not every absence is a loss. Some are the very blessings you didn't know you needed. Some are grace in disguise. And the more you trust that, the less rejection hurts. Because you no longer see it as punishment. You see it as redirection. And that shift changes everything. There's a silence that most people never learn to face. It arrives when the crowd leaves, when the screen dims, when the door closes, and no one is around to clap or correct or distract you. It's the silence of true solitude, not loneliness, not absence, but presence stripped bare. And that silence unnerves people. Because when you're finally alone with your thoughts, there's no performance left to maintain. No image to protect, no conversation to hide behind, just you, unfiltered, unmasked, and often unfamiliar. We're taught to fear this, to run from it, to fill it with noise, messages, headlines, movement, because stillness feels like exposure, and exposure for many feels like danger. But in that fear is a clue, a sign that we've spent too much time living outside ourselves, borrowing energy from the world instead of generating it from within. When solitude becomes something to escape rather than embrace, we lose access to the very source of our power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That wasn't poetic philosophy, that was practical survival. The world will always pull at you, demanding your energy, your attention, your reaction. But solitude is where you learn to pull back, to return, to re-enter the only place you can ever fully control, your inner world. And once you're there, truly there, you begin to understand something most people never do. Peace is not found in noise, approval, or company. It's found in the depth of your own awareness. It's not easy, though. The first time you sit in solitude, your thoughts might feel chaotic, even overwhelming. Doubt creeps in. Regret surfaces. Memories echo louder than you remember them being. This is where most people quit. They reach for a distraction, a call, a task, anything to muffle what's rising. But the Stoic doesn't run. The Stoic observes. They understand that the discomfort of being alone is not a punishment. It's a process, a purification, a mirror, and what it shows you, if you're willing to sit with it, is not your weakness, but your unfinished self. Carl Jung believed that who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And it's true, when you finally turn inward, the dreams you were chasing begin to look different. You stop needing the world to tell you who you are. You start to hear a quieter voice, one not shaped by fear or pride or praise. It's the voice of clarity, of truth, and it doesn't shout, it whispers, which is why it's so often missed in the noise. Solitude is not the absence of connection, it's the foundation of it. Because until you learn to be fully present with yourself, every relationship you build will be rooted in avoidance. Avoiding emptiness, boredom, insecurity. But when you learn to face those things alone, without running, without reaching, you stop needing others to complete you. You start choosing them instead, not for survival, but for resonance. And in that choice, something powerful emerges. You become less reactive, less desperate, less scattered. The world doesn't get to pull you out of your center so easily anymore. You stop giving your peace away for temporary attention. You stop negotiating your worth for proximity, because you know, deeply know, that you are already whole. Not because someone said so, but because you sat with yourself long enough to see it for yourself. Seneca once said, "A great mind becomes a great fortune, but great minds are not born from constant motion. They are shaped in silence, in reflection, in solitude." That's where strength becomes steady, not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable. And once you've felt that stillness, once you've experienced peace not tied to external validation, you start to crave it like oxygen. You begin to build your life around preserving it. And others notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. There's something about a person who doesn't need to be seen to feel real. Something magnetic about someone who doesn't chase attention, but radiates presence. It's because solitude has made them solid. And that solidity is rare. So the next time the silence feels heavy, don't run, sit with it, listen. It's not a void, it's a mirror. And if you stay long enough, what you see won't scare you, it will free you. Because the peace you find there, that steady, quiet sense of self, is not dependent on anyone's love, permission, or approval. It's yours. And once you know how to return to it, the world can no longer pull you out of alignment. You become anchored, rooted, whole. And in that stillness, you'll realize something quietly extraordinary. Solitude was never your weakness. It was always your strength in disguise. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, where you say no, and the entire room feels it. Not because your voice was raised, but because your truth finally was. And in that instant, someone looks at you like you've changed. Maybe they frown, maybe they question, maybe they fall silent. But what they're really reacting to isn't disrespect, it's clarity. You are no longer available for the same patterns, the same cycles, the same quiet self-abandonment you used to offer so easily. And that unsettles people, not because you've become unkind, but because you've stopped making their comfort your responsibility. Saying no isn't a rejection of others, it's an affirmation of yourself. And when you start choosing yourself consistently, the world you once belonged to begins to shift. You'll notice who only loved you when you said yes. You'll feel who only stayed close because your silence made them comfortable. But you'll also notice something else, something quieter, stronger, more important. You'll begin to feel your center again, that grounded sense of knowing where you end and where others begin. This is where boundaries are born, not out of bitterness but out of balance, not as punishment but as protection. And this is what many don't understand. Boundaries aren't about building walls. They're about creating a life that's sustainable for your soul. They're how you teach the world to treat you, by first showing yourself that your needs are not negotiable, that your peace is not a reward, that your values are not decorations, they're direction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But how can you live by that principle if your boundaries are porous, if you constantly bend in the name of harmony while your inner world is in conflict? Stoicism isn't just about calm in the face of chaos. It's about structure. It's about living by a code, and you cannot live by a code if you're constantly adjusting yourself to fit the code of others. Boundaries are how you begin to build the kind of strength that doesn't shout, the kind of strength that doesn't rely on force, but on consistency. Because once your no becomes as sacred as your yes, people start listening differently, and those who can't, they start fading. Not because you pushed them away, but because they were only ever there for the version of you who made herself small to keep the peace. And becoming yourself fully, unapologetically, requires boundaries, not the kind that isolate, but the kind that clarify. the kind that allow you to move through life with openness and strength at the same time. When you have clear boundaries, you can give more freely because you know where the line is. You can love more honestly because you're not afraid of losing yourself in the process. Most people confuse boundaries with coldness. They think protecting your time, your energy, your values means you're being difficult. But in truth, it's the highest form of self-respect. Because without boundaries, everything becomes blurry. Your relationships blur into obligation. Your generosity blurs into resentment. Your silence blurs into permission. And over time, you begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. Overextended, overpromised, underprotected. Seneca once said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." And how often do we suffer in silence? Not because we have to, but because we've convinced ourselves that speaking up would make us the problem, that drawing a line would be selfish. But here's the truth. It's not selfish to protect what matters. It's not selfish to say, "This is what I need." What's selfish is expecting someone to constantly give from an empty cup, to suppress their truth so others don't feel discomfort. And discomfort is not the enemy. Growth requires it. Boundaries will create tension, yes. They will unsettle people who've benefited from your lack of them. But that tension is not cruelty. It's clarity. It reveals what was built on genuine connection and what was built on convenience. And the more you honor your boundaries, the more peace you begin to feel. Not because life gets easier, but because your choices start to align with your values. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying. You stop asking permission to protect your own peace. And in that simplicity, something powerful returns. Your time, your focus, your sense of self. You no longer wake up with a calendar full of things you agreed to out of guilt. You no longer walk into conversations rehearsing how to say things without offending. You just speak, gently, firmly, honestly. And those who are meant to stay, stay. Those who aren't, leave. Both are gifts. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And knowing yourself means knowing what supports your growth and what stunts it, who adds peace and who extracts it, which behaviors you're willing to tolerate and which are non-negotiable. These aren't rules to trap others. They are principles to guide you. So the next time you feel that pull to shrink, to soften, to say yes when every part of you is begging for space, pause. Ask yourself, if I say yes to them, am I saying no to myself? Because your life is not just a reflection of what you accept. It's a reflection of what you refuse to apologize for. And once you stop apologizing for your boundaries, everything begins to shift. You don't just become harder to manipulate, you become easier to trust. You don't just become more honest, you become more peaceful. And the peace that comes from living in alignment is the kind that can't be taken, only chosen. That's what it means to love yourself more than anyone else. Not by closing off, but by drawing lines that allow you to stay open without being emptied. Quiet strength, clear values, boundaries without apology. This is where real freedom begins. You will still feel it all. The sting when someone you trusted walks away. The heavy silence after a disappointment you didn't see coming. The sharp edge of unmet expectations, the ones you built so carefully, only to watch them fall apart. Nothing about learning to love yourself more than anyone else erases emotion. It doesn't make you immune to heartbreak or untouched by grief. What changes isn't what you feel, it's how you carry it. Most people believe strength means being unaffected. They think power means feeling nothing, shutting it down, pretending they've moved on before they've even had a moment to sit with the pain. But suppression is not strength, it's delay, and everything you refuse to face simply waits for you, growing louder the longer it's ignored. Carl Jung said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's what happens when you don't face your emotions. They end up controlling you from the shadows. Emotional mastery isn't about building walls. It's about creating space. The kind of space where you can feel without losing yourself, where you can observe what rises without immediately reacting, chasing, or collapsing. The Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our opinions about them, which means it's not the feeling that's the problem. It's how quickly we assign meaning to that feeling, how quickly we turn pain into a story about our inadequacy, how fast we take rejection and wear it as proof of our unworthiness. But when you learn to sit with emotion without grabbing onto it, something changes. You stop being at the mercy of your mood. You no longer swing from high to low based on who texts you, who praises you, who shows up or who doesn't. You begin to steady, you begin to watch, you feel the ache, but it doesn't control your voice. You feel the sadness, but it doesn't dictate your choices. And that's when real power begins. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. There's a deep kind of self-love that's not loud or showy. It's the kind that speaks when everything inside wants to scream. The kind that chooses stillness when chaos is knocking. The kind that doesn't betray its own values in the heat of reaction. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And it's in that moment, when the storm rises inside you and you don't flinch, that you realize what strength really looks like. Emotional ownership is what most people mistake for identity. They say, "I am angry," or "I am broken." But you are not your emotion. You are the one experiencing it, the one witnessing it. The moment you confuse the two, you lose your power, because you forget that emotions pass, but your decisions remain. And every time you act from a place of unexamined pain, you build a life around wounds instead of around wisdom. It's not about denying the hurt. It's about learning from it. Let it teach you, not lead you. Let it whisper, not command. You can cry and still be strong. You can feel and still be disciplined. You can care deeply and still walk away when peace costs too much. Emotional mastery isn't rigid, it's responsive. It knows when to pause, it knows when to speak. And most importantly, it knows that nothing is gained by reacting too quickly to a temporary feeling. Emotions are not the adversity. Reacting blindly to them is. The proof of who you are is not in what you feel. It's in what you do with those feelings. Do you let them guide your life, or do you guide them with intention? Do you fall apart every time disappointment knocks, or do you rise again, steadier each time? There's a kind of confidence that doesn't come from success or praise. It comes from surviving your own storms, from not abandoning yourself when things get heavy, from feeling everything fully and still choosing peace. That's what makes you unshakable. Not a lack of feeling, but a lack of surrender to those feelings. And once you taste that kind of strength, you won't trade it for anything. You'll stop explaining your emotions to people who haven't earned your truth. You'll stop waiting for others to validate your sadness or justify your anger. You'll feel deeply and move wisely. You'll be both soft and immovable. And that balance, that quiet integration, is what separates those who live on edge from those who live on purpose. Loving yourself more than anyone else doesn't mean you never get hurt. It means you stop letting pain convince you to turn against yourself. It means you start showing up for your own heart the way you've shown up for everyone else's. It means you no longer let emotions hijack your peace. Instead, you welcome them, learn from them, and release them like waves that wash over you but never drown you. This is how you become emotionally sovereign, not detached, but discerning, not empty, but anchored. You feel everything, but you are owned by nothing, and that is freedom. There's a quiet turning point most people never talk about. It doesn't come with a grand breakthrough or a dramatic speech. It comes in stillness, in a morning where you wake up and realize you no longer care if they reply. In a moment where you don't rush to explain yourself. In the silence between disappointment and reaction, where you feel calm, not because you've stopped caring, but because you finally understand your peace isn't tied to how others treat you. That's when it happens. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop molding yourself into someone that fits into someone else's expectations, and instead, for the first time, you begin to become your own source. It's strange at first. The things you once ran after, validation, attention, reassurance, they begin to lose their grip on you, not because they aren't tempting, but because you've tasted something better, inner stillness. You no longer need a crowd to feel real. You no longer need constant reminders that you matter. And it's not because you've become cold or distant, it's because you've started giving to yourself what you used to demand from others. That isn't selfishness, that's healing. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That awakening doesn't make you louder, it makes you grounded. You stop rushing to be liked because you're too busy being whole. You stop pleading to be understood by people who are more interested in controlling you than connecting with you. And when someone misunderstands your boundaries, your silence, your growth, you let them, because you know you're not responsible for reshaping your soul just to be digestible. The moment you become the source, the dynamics change. People who once ignored you begin to notice. Those who once tested your worth begin to respect your distance, not because you proved anything, but because you stopped asking them to validate what was already true. When you remove your need to be chosen, you become undeniable. You radiate something they can't quite place, something steady, untouchable. You carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to be needed, and that energy disrupts people who depend on others being insecure to feel important. There's a quiet power in refusing to be shaken, in not lowering your standards for the sake of belonging, in no longer shrinking your values for temporary company. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And once your thoughts shift from self-doubt to self-trust, your entire world begins to reflect it. You no longer measure your worth by who stays, who claps, who offers praise. You measure it by how true you remain to yourself. This isn't about isolation. It's about independence. It's about having relationships by choice, not by emotional neediness. When you love yourself more than anyone else, you enter connection from fullness, not from lack. You no longer grip. You no longer grasp. You flow. And ironically, that's when people begin to lean in. Not because you demanded their attention, but because you became the kind of presence that doesn't beg for it. Seneca said, "The man who is content to be alone is never truly alone." Because when you become the source of your own strength, your own clarity, your own peace, you carry companionship within you. You're not dependent on the moods of others to stabilize your identity. You no longer look around the room for permission to exist. You bring your own seat. You carry your own light. That's not arrogance, that's maturity. That's the reward of finally confronting all the parts of yourself you once tried to outsource to the world. It's the reward of loving yourself enough to stop abandoning yourself for temporary comfort. You begin to choose solitude over chaos, depth over attention, integrity over agreement. And when you do that long enough, your presence begins to speak before you ever open your mouth. People notice, they feel it, and suddenly the energy shifts. The ones who once took you for granted begin to wonder what changed. The ones who overlooked you now feel unsettled in your absence, and the ones who never truly saw you begin to realize they never really knew you. But by then, you've already moved on, not out of bitterness, but out of alignment. You've outgrown the need to prove your worth. You've outgrown the habit of waiting to be loved. And when you know yourself deeply, when you finally become your own anchor, the world no longer dictates your value. You do. You set the standard. You decide what you allow, what you invest in, what you walk away from. And that quiet certainty, that's what makes you magnetic. So if you've been waiting for someone to finally see you, choose you, understand you, pause. What if you became the one who sees yourself first? What if the approval you've been chasing has been yours to give all along? What if the love you're seeking from others is simply waiting to be given to yourself? When you stop chasing and start becoming, everything shifts. You don't need the world to give you what you've already found within. You don't demand attention. You command space, not through force, through presence, through peace, through being so full of your own truth that you no longer fit into anything smaller. That is the moment you stop waiting to be enough and simply are. That's what it means to become the source, quiet, powerful, complete, and completely free. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are no longer searching to be seen. Because the moment you return to yourself, fully, honestly, and without apology, you became whole. And wholeness doesn't chase, it attracts. So walk forward now, not in need, but in knowing. You are the source, you always were. If this message stirred something inside you, there's more waiting for you. Watch one of the videos now appearing on your screen. And thank you for walking this path with Stoic Journal.